Welcome, football stalkers. I am joined. I know a lot of people are happy and they're admiring the work of the lady joining me, Simone. She obviously, a lot of people know this. She was a biokinetician at Highlands Park, and she's also had some work at the national team, the under 20 and the under 23. Now, there's been a whole lot of speculation, Simone. Sundowns fans have been calling for your name. They've been calling for your point. What do you have to say?
Yeah, well, there's definitely nothing happening with regards to me going to Sundowns. That's about all I can say. It's a whole lot of speculation. I think fans just maybe acknowledging my work and what I did with Highlands Park and perhaps previous teams that I worked with, but there's nothing concrete with regards to me going to Sundowns.
Okay, well, I'm sure they'll be heartbroken to hear that because, I mean, like you said, your work speaks for itself, and a lot of people are very impressed, and they know very well that there's an opening at Sundowns. But who knows? Maybe it's still coming. Maybe it's still coming. But
maybe, I believe that everything happens according to God's will and in His time. So maybe it's not the right time for me to be going there right now, but maybe in the future it will materialize. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. But now, look, we know that you started off in rugby and you made the switch to soccer. What would you say is the difference between the two?
The major difference is that rugby is very established already with regards to biokinetics and sports science in comparison to football. So while I was with the Lions Rugby, I realized, I don't really feel like there's a gap here for me, There's no real opportunity for me to make a noticeable impact. So the other sport that I really loved was football. So that's basically when I decided to study my master's degree in football and then see where that takes me. And that's basically how I got my foot in the door.
So you, from a very young age, or did you recently start following football?
No, I think when I started university, that's when I started following football. That's when I realized, look, I want to be in the sporting industry. Before university, I was obviously, in school playing more sport than watching sport. So I decided I want to be in the football industry. I want to be in the sporting world. That's why I decided to become a biokineticist. So I started following football when I started university. And I actually volunteered at the Stars of Africa Academy while I was doing my honors degree. So technically I was in football before rugby, just at on a voluntary level, volunteering my time, volunteering my assets, that type of thing.
I was actually going to ask you, since you started off at rugby, how was your switch from rugby to football? But now, if you're saying that you actually started with football before you actually did some work in rugby, but in terms of, I read an article, another profession who spoke about movements. He said that the different movements from rugby to football is different. The physical nature of rugby obviously is different to football. How did you cope with that challenge where, like you said, you were in rugby and you met with people that were very established, who've been dealing with it for, obviously they've got experience, and then having to now switch to football where it's more technical rather than more physical?
You see, both sports are physical. Both sports are very physical, but they're physical in different ways. And when you study sports science and biokinetics, you need to obviously look at the individualization and the sporting principles of a particular sporting code. So the adaptation between the two is very simple because you just have to look at what are the requirements that a footballer needs versus the requirements that a rugby player needs, And then as a professional who has studied, it comes easy. It comes very easy because you just apply what you've learned and you apply the experiences that you had. Honestly, a lot of what I'm doing in football, or what I was doing in football, I learned from rugby, because there's a certain base that you need as an athlete, regardless of any sport that you compete in. And that's the secret. If you get the base right, the rest will just follow, and you'll actually excel and have a lot of success with the rest of your physical conditioning if you get the base right. So the base is very similar for all sporting codes. I mean, I've worked in a bit of swimming, I've worked in athletics, and the basic principles that you apply is very similar, but then you get to, specifying and individualization according to the different scientific principles that a sport needs. So because I studied this, it came very easy, the adjustment between the two.
So, okay, then quickly explain to the people that are going to be watching. You speak about basics and fundamentally they're the same, and then you can then individualize them. So movement of demands and forces, how different are they from rugby? And to also explain a little bit to people watching, what are those?
Well, basically, I think to simplify it, you have different movement patterns in rugby than you do have in football. Okay, rugby is more of a contact sport. Rugby, you have a lower center of gravity, but then with regards to football's less contact, there's still contact, but there's obviously a lot less contact compared to rugby. Your center of gravity is obviously heightened, but then you still have the same basic movement principles. You still need speed, you still need agility, you still need plyometrics in both rugby and football. You need more plyometrics in football than you do need in rugby, So yes, the movement patterns are different, in terms of especially your center of gravity in rugby versus football. But the rest of it is really similar. You basically, the principles of speed, plyometrics, endurance, agility, all those sort of things are very, very similar.
Okay, now let's say the type of exercises that you do with the players and stuff, would you then say based on that, is it the same with what you had at rugby, or is it a little bit different that you maybe concentrate on something a little bit more than the other?
Okay, it's different. It's very different. It's even different between different footballing teams. All right, so I did different exercises with the national team in comparison with Highlands Park. I did different exercises with Highlands Park in comparison to the Kiona project. It's how I work is I look at the outcomes desired. I look at what the coach wants, the type of coaching style the coach has, the type of physical attributes the players I have, has, and the type of playing style the players have. So, you can compare football and rugby, but in football itself, depending on what you have to work with, already that makes the type of exercises you do completely different. The playing style of the coach, the desired outputs with regards to the coach also makes it very different, So every coach is different, every team's philosophy is different, every team's playing style is different, every team's personnel, and that's where the crux is different. So I based my training on what I have to work with and what the desired outcomes of that particular team is. So comparing football to rugby, of course, there would be various different exercises. But when you want to build speed, you can take similar exercises and do it, But then you adapt it to, again, the team, the coach, and the personnel that you're working with.
So now, since you obviously worked under Owen Dagama, you worked at the under 23, what would you then say would be the difference? And also, which one did you enjoy the most? Because if we look at the way Highlands Park play, they're good on the ball. They can play a passing game, but at the same time, they can expose the space behind in playing the long ball and using the height to the advantage. So now, based on that type of playing style, and if you look at the national team, where it's more of a ball-playing team. So, I mean, if you look at the size of players, you're talking about average height type of players where you don't generally have tall guys. They're not as physical as other teams. So, what is the difference, and which one did you enjoy the most?
Look, it's totally different experiences. I mean, at national team, you basically get together for a camp, which is usually a week, sometimes 2 weeks. The Olympic Games was approximately a month. So that's the difference. You've got to adapt how you train individuals according to the demands of game time So basically the Olympics and the World Cup that I went to was tournaments, so you don't have the luxury of time, you don't have the luxury of space, you don't have the luxury of progression over a specific amount of time. You've got to prepare a team to compete within 2 or 3 days and then compete again in another 2 or 3 days, So the major difference is the one is tournament style, and then working in the PSL is league style. I enjoyed both, there's pros and cons to both. I think I definitely enjoyed working with the PSL, especially starting in the NFD, because I had a lot of time to build. You get what I'm saying? So when I arrived at Highlands Park in the NFD, one of their major concerns were the fitness levels of the players. I sent them to Tux to do a full sports science exercise test battery to test their physical readiness. And the results were worse than all 5 Kiona years that I did. And the difference is that these were NFD players in season versus Kiona, which was development players that, you scout from all over South Africa, taking them out of rural areas and so on, where they don't have training. So I had a challenge. I had a big challenge with regards to the conditioning of Highlands Park. But because I had time and I had the latitude to build, because we were in a league situation, I really enjoyed that because I could see like the fruits of my labor. I could see the difference from when we started to when we ended in the NFD season, if you understand what I'm saying. So I really enjoyed seeing the progress made. Whereas with the national team, you're preparing them over a short period of time, and you don't really get the luxury of seeing the impact and the progress you make in terms of taking someone from this level to that level in terms of their conditioning, fitness, rehabilitation, and so on.
So taking that kind of experience from the national team, do you think that it better prepared you for the bio bubble that we had, where obviously the announcement in teams having to go back to training and the amount of time given to when the games are going to be played? Obviously being in the bio bubble itself was a challenge, staying in hotels and stuff. But in terms of getting that physical condition from the players, do you think the national team prepared you well to deal with that challenge?
Yes, definitely, because it became like a tournament style situation. So it definitely did. That experience of being part of the national setup gave us a bit of an edge. We were able to correctly periodize during being in the bubble. Highlands Park, we went unbeaten, despite the sad news that we got while we were in the bubble. I think that was the biggest deterring factor with regards to our success. I think we would have done a lot better. I think we would have won more games. We only won one. We won one and drew 5. I think we would have won more games if we did not have that psychological, mental aspect now coming into play with hearing from Cape Town City that our team was sold. So I think definitely, being able to periodize at national level definitely taught me and gave me a base and an experience to periodize within that bubble.
So now, Simone, the challenges that you're facing with coaching or with obviously training Highlands Park and with the national team, would you say that your challenges are different to your male counterparts?
Yeah, first and foremost, the biggest challenge is being given the opportunity, I think, as a female, in a male-dominated industry. I think that's the first challenge, is to actually get or to show that you're valuable and that you deserve an opportunity being a woman coming into a male-dominated field. I think that if you compare me to any other fitness trainers who are mostly male in the industry, I had to study for 8 years before I really got the opportunity. Whereas there are other male fitness trainers that are working right now and they maybe studied, a 12-month sports science course or perhaps a 3-year degree. I can't say for sure, but before I was able to get a proper opportunity, I had to study. I had to push myself to study for 8 years. And I think that that's the first challenge, being a woman, you've got to have the paperwork. You've got to have confidence, you've got to have guts, and you've got to have a lot of self-belief, and you've got to be able to basically show that you are worthy of the opportunity. I think that was my first stumbling block. That was my first challenge. But luckily, God placed the right people in my path. My first opportunity that was given to me to coach at a greater level than volunteering at Stars of Africa and then also volunteering my time at SAFA schools was through Coach Cabo Zondo. He basically realized my potential and my hard work, my work ethic, my confidence while working with him on voluntary basis at the SAFA schools. He then took me into the Kiona project where I met the other coaches, and then they realized, this is a woman, but she's got a little bit of potential there. So let's give her the opportunity.
I mean,
that was the first step.
I heard an interview where you spoke about you don't just want to participate or be part of this male-dominated industry. You actually want to dominate. That was,
Yeah.
if anybody heard the interview you had with Robert Maraba, you sound like a humble person. But when I saw that other one where you're like, listen, I don't just want to be there, I want to dominate. I was like, yes, that's how it should be.
Yeah, I think you have to find a balance. You've got to find a balance. I've always got to be open to learning. I've always got to be open to growing. I've always got to be open to developing. But at the same time, I feel like I've put so much work, so much time, so much effort to get this opportunity that I can't just come into the opportunity and be average. I've got to raise my game. I've got to up my game. I've got to try and dominate. I've got to try and make myself, I think anybody that goes into any career should want to be the best or want to be one of the best in their fields. So yes, I do want to dominate, but at the same time, I'm very open to learning and growing and that type of thing.
Then one then has to wonder, what would then be the pinnacle for Simone?
I think, well, I don't know, hey. It's a difficult question to answer because it's something that can evolve and change. You know what I'm saying? The pinnacle can this month be this situation, and in a year's time from now, it can be a total different situation. So it's yet to come. It's yet to come. It's like I feel like I'm in a transition phase now where my pinnacle is still open to opportunities, open to experiences, open to situations that will unfold in God's time. So yeah, I think with regards to highlights in my career so far, it's definitely the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. I think that for me was an unbelievable experience, playing against Brazil in the opening game, packed stadium, and we managed to hold them to a 0-0 draw with a man down because Matope Mbala got a red card on the 57th minute. So yeah, I think the world's your oyster and there's so much more to come.
Oh, yes, it is. I actually expected you to say sky's the limit. I was like, whoa, sky is the limit.
But people think I've been throwing hints about Sundowns on every platform, and I haven't. I really haven't. I posted a picture where I'm actually jumping with a spotlight and my hands like this, but only after somebody hinted that, oh, I see the sign that your hand is making. I was like, oh my goodness, my hand's really making the Sundown sign. It was an oops moment.
I mean,
maybe, I don't know.
It comes naturally. Maybe it's meant to, maybe be holding up that sign. I mean, plus, if we look at the challenges at Sundowns, I mean, we talk about a team that competes in CAF Champions League season by season. We talk about a team that aspires to go to the Club World Cup. I mean, hey, you have international experience, you have PSL experience. Why not? And also qualification. I mean, you are most qualified. Why not? Hold up that sign. Maybe. Okay, so now you spoke about the fact that your profession is not treated the same as players and all those in terms of contracts. Why is that? Is it something that you guys are comfortable with, or is it something that in the future that you guys would want to change?
I think that it just wasn't treated the same way as a player at my previous club at Highlands Park, because when I went into Highlands Park, I did not know. Remember, I started in the NFD. We were not guaranteed that we were going to get promotion to the PSL. I did not realize that my time would be 100% football, So I went in as an external service provider because I'm a biokineticist by profession and I have my own practice. So my contract was basically to provide Highlands Park with a service, but at the same time, I was still practicing at my own practice. And I think that is the only factor that made my contract different. But then going into the PSL, my practice started to suffer because majority of my time was spent at the football club, traveling, to away games, camping for home games, that it really became a full-time football situation. So I think if I were to get the opportunity and the blessing from God to go to another team, I would adjust my contract, to be similar to that of a player and a coach.
Yes. Okay, and injuries. Which injuries, if you look back, that you were like, okay, that was a huge challenge that I had to deal with, and I learned a lot from dealing with that.
If I look back at my career so far in football, I think one of the biggest challenges was the injuries that we had at national team level leading up to qualification for Rio. Two of our very most important influential players, being Gift Matupa and Menzi Masuku at the time, they were playing for Pirates. They had injuries. And just before we left for Rio, they'd already been selected into the team. There's no way you can change the team, because once you submit that documentation with regards to your team to FIFA, you cannot change. You've got to go through with it. And now two of our influential players come into camp and they've got injuries, and we've got to, quickly get them ready to basically play in the Olympic Games. I think that was one of the situations where I learned a lot. Gift Matupa was our top man. He was a good striker. The coach was very fond of him, and I had to basically make sure that I get Gift onto the field in a very short space of time. And I think that was a very early learning curve in my career, if you understand what I'm saying. And the pressure at national level is far more than the pressure at team level, because at team level, you've got a squad. You've got other players that can replace your selected player. You've got time, you've got help. Whereas at national team level, you're playing in 2 weeks' time. You're about to fly to Brazil. You've got to get this player ready. There's maybe another option, but it's only two players. If your other option gets injured in training, you've got nowhere to turn to, because we took, your 24 players with. So you're restricted, you're limited. So I think that was basically my biggest challenge. And the time in which I had to get that player ready and rehabilitate that player was the biggest challenge.
Okay, so now players that you would say that were pleasant to work with. Now, you've had obviously the opportunity to work with the likes of Yeye, you've got Shalulile, you had Mvala, you also had players, like you said, with Menzi Masuka and Mutupa, and all other players there at the national team. So who would you say was pleasant to work with?
I think they were all pleasant to work with, to be honest. They come with different personalities, different strengths, different weaknesses, different attitudes towards training. All of them were such a pleasure to work with. It's an honor to work with a player like Yeye Letolonyane. It's an honor to work with a player like Bevan Fransman. And then, when I started off with the national team, I was able to work with Keegan Dolly. I worked with Luther Singh at Stars of Africa. I worked with, Gift, Ricardo Goss, who's doing really, really well now. I can't single out one player over another. They're all just been such a pleasure and a great honor to work with. I think a standout player for me that I've worked with is Bongani Sam, because to see that boy's growth from the Nedbank Kiona team search, because that's where he was found, to see at his very young age, he was 19 when we found him at the Kiona team search, and how he grew and developed into this magnificent player, because he was at Kiona, he went to Celtic's development team. We then pulled him into Highlands Park when we got there to the NFD. I was able to work with him in the NFD. Then he went back to Celtics, competed in the PSL, and now he's at Orlando Pirates. So he's a standout player in terms of being able to watch his growth. He's got the right attitude, he's got a good personality, he's got the right age, and I'm looking forward to see his career grow even more. But honestly, they're all been a pleasure to work with. There's no player that I can say was, a nightmare to work with. There's been players that give you challenges, but never, there's all been, it's I don't know, football players are great people, to be honest with you. They're very, very great people. I love working with them.
So there's a certain perception when it comes to top players that there's minimum work that needs to be done with these players. Would you say that it's something that you noticed as well with, you being experienced with the Kiona players and players from the development structures to like your Yaya or Fransman, players who've been in the game for long, who know what it takes, who know what to do? Do you find yourself in situations where you had to say less to them because they knew what was going on? Or was it the same?
Definitely. No, it's not the same. It's not the same. Just in terms of a physical conditioning situation, it's definitely not the same. Like when Bevan Fransman signed for Highlands Park, we just got promotion to the PSL. He came from Maritzburg. And you could see that he's at a different level, to the Highlands Park players I found in the NFD when I just started. Also, their attitude, their work rate, it's different. It's different because they've been there. They've seen a lot, they know a lot, but one of the biggest and the most satisfying things is just how humble they are. Despite having been through years of playing at the top level, at national level, at international level, they're just so humble. And they're such good influences to the rest of the players. But there's definitely a difference with your experienced, players versus your development players, your players who are just coming through or making a break into the industry. Physically, emotionally, psychologically, attitude-wise, there's definitely a difference. Yes, you do get experienced players that have a bit of a ego, have a bit of, a sense of arrogance, but that's just their personalities, and that works for some people, that works for some people. So, yeah.
And how did you deal with those kind of players who were arrogant?
The nicer you are to them, the nicer they are to you. The more you get to know them and their personalities and understand them, the more they get to know you and your personality and understand you, the better the relationship, So that's just how you deal with it. You grow and you learn to understand the person, their personalities, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. Players have characters. They have characters, Telling a Peter Shalulele to do an outrageous exercise is so much easier than telling Tendai Ndoro to do an outrageous exercise. You get what I'm saying? The effort that they'll put in, the result that they'll come out with will be totally different. But once you win Tendai Ndoro over and he gets to understand you, gets to understand why you're doing what you're doing, gets to understand what you do, how you do it, and how it can benefit him, then he starts to put in the effort. So it's a process. It's like building a working relationship with anybody. You've got to understand their qualities, their weaknesses, their strengths, what drives them, what they prefer, what works for them, their playing style, their attitude, all those type of things.
Okay. Do you have any embarrassing moments that you've encountered?
Embarrassing moments?
Yeah.
Embarrassing, like where I was embarrassed in front of the players or any...
Whether it's in front of players or whether what you consider...
No, I don't think so. Nothing stands out. I'm not usually easily embarrassed, I think. Maybe that's why. A mistake is a mistake. Yes, I've made many mistakes. Yes, I've been shouted at lots of times. Yeah, but I'm not easily embarrassed. So, no, there's no standout embarrassing moment, really. Yes, I ask questions that might be dumb, that, players might be like, why on earth is she asking that question? She doesn't understand. But then afterwards, I understand and I grow and I know more. So I don't know, there's no standout embarrassing moment. Not yet. Maybe that's going to come.
Well, as soon as that happens, please let us know. Now, the season is about to start. Let's now talk a little bit of results now. What are your predictions for the new season?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one because so much has changed in the PSL. There's so many changes. There's so much, there's 3 new teams now with Swallows having been promoted, with TTM having taken over Wits, with TS Galaxy having taken over Highland Spark, that it's going to be an interesting season. Another thing that's going to make it very interesting is the COVID situation, because, the last season was extended, Some teams rested, some teams trained throughout the previous season. So your periodization, your burnout, your fatigue levels, all of that's going to be very, very interesting to watch and monitor from the sidelines, because I think planning is going to be so crucial. I think also what they're going to try and do, if from looking at the fixtures, is congest the fixtures a bit so that they can finish the season, in time to start the following season. So I think COVID is going to be the biggest challenge. Time is going to be the biggest challenge. My predictions is the most experienced teams, the teams with the biggest squads, the team with players that, have been there, done that. They'll definitely take the cups. They'll definitely take the leagues. The reason I say that is because Sundowns, for example, is very used to playing under a lot of pressure, playing games, week in and week out, 3, sometimes 4 games in 1 week. So they've got the experience with how to handle that, versus a new team like TTM, which is coming into the MTN 8 for the very first time. It's going to be a challenge for them. It's going to be adaptation phase for them. So I see our top 5 teams being Sundowns, Chiefs, Pirates, SuperSport, Maritzburg, Cape Town City. Cape Town City is definitely there in the mix. They ended, their season with a bang in the bubble. So that for me is the prediction.
And if we talk about the bottom half of the league, which teams do you think they're going to be in trouble this season? I mean, if we look at TTM, for example, TTM, it's a name change. Yes, we can say half of the squad has left to other teams, but you still have PSL players who are still in there. They've acquired the likes of Opa Manyesa, Malongwane. So they do have guys who know how to play in the PSL. But apart from that, what would you say would be the bottom half of the league? Who's in danger of possibly being relegated?
You see, that's very difficult to say, because like I said, there's 3 new teams coming in, and the difficulty in predicting that is that we've not seen those 3 new teams just yet. So maybe halfway into the season, I can give my prediction to say, I think this team will be relegated and that team will go to playoffs. But right now it's very difficult. But one thing I can tell you, for the new teams coming in, it won't be easy. I think NFD versus PSL is a total different level. I think, integrating 2 teams, such as integrating Highland Spark and TS Galaxy, is a challenge. I think integrating what you have left from Wits and now your TTM, and also then moving to a different province, is a challenge. So honestly, I think that the new teams have a big challenge. But if they're able to rise to the occasion and, really take that challenge on with all that they have, they could be safe, they could be successful, and we might see Black Leopards, or I don't know, Baraka struggling, or it's tough. It's so tough to say. It could go anyway. The challenge is that there's a difference in terms of the length of the season, a difference in terms of the amount of games you're going to play in a short period of time, and there's a difference in terms of the new teams coming in. So I can't give you a prediction, but one thing I can say, it's not going to be easy for your 3 new teams, especially the ones where you've integrated and you've moved to a different province. I think that's a challenge on its own.
Okay, lastly, which team does Simone support?
Okay, I think the most important thing is that when you work in this industry, you cannot support a team. You cannot support a team because, I can't say my heart is with Sundowns, and then in 3 years' time, I get a call from Chiefs and they want me and it's a great job offer. And I'm like, okay, now my heart is with Chiefs. And then I get a call from Cape Town City and then my heart, So I can't be working for Cape Town City while I deep down in my heart support Pirates. And we are playing against Pirates and I'm working for Cape Town City. I want Cape Town City to win. But in the meantime, I've been a Pirate supporter all my life. It doesn't work. It just,
Simone, I can say this. We know there are players who, they basically told us which teams they grew up supporting and all that. but they're professionals. They can play for the opposition. They can play for, but we know that they grew up supporting that, their family supports that. So I'm putting you on the spot. Which team did you grow up supporting? We know, look, when it comes to professionalism, we know Simone is a true professional. She's going to give her 110% wherever she goes. That is no doubt. But which team did she grow up supporting?
Okay, that's a different question. Which team did I grow up supporting versus which team do I support now?
Okay.
Right now, I don't support any team. I support the industry because I work in the industry. But growing up, I lived in the south of Johannesburg, so I'm already taking you there. And I went to Medal Primary School. Yeah, I'm a girl. What do I know about soccer as a little kid? I'm a girl. I went to Medal Primary School. And I had a friend who I played netball with, and she was one of my close friends back in primary school. Her name was Ntabi Singh. So Ntabi Singh just happened to be the niece of Mr. Ivan, Mr. Kaiser Mutaung. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because I had a friend who had a direct affiliation to Kaiser Chiefs, I also lived in the south, right around the corner from Nature Arena. I grew up supporting Kaiser Chiefs, but because of affiliation, my friend always coming to school saying, oh, my uncle's soccer team is playing and all that type of stuff. Oh, who's your uncle's soccer team? It was the first team I was ever exposed to. It was the first team I knew about. I never knew about Pirates. I never knew about Sundowns. I had no direct affiliation. I was a little girl in primary school. So how does a little girl get to know about football other than through association or affiliation with friends? So yeah, I was with my friend. We played netball together. She'd always tell me about Chiefs. Chiefs is playing. And yeah, I never ever really watched football avidly until I got to university level. That's really when I started. And that's why I support Man City. Don't judge me. I support Man City, the new team, because that is when I really started getting into football.
Okay, look, I think we need to set a date, right? Hopefully, as the season progresses, that the restrictions will be removed to a point where supporters will be allowed to go to the games. So the date is this: when Pirates and Kaiser Chiefs is playing, going there with you, and we're gonna want you to be the neutral one to tell us what you saw in the game and also give us an insight on the physical attributes of players and all that stuff. Deal?
No problem. I think I'm neutral as it is right now. I do not support Chiefs. I do not support Pirates. I do not support Sundowns. The last team I supported was Highlands Park because I worked for Highlands Park. Every single game we played, I wanted to win. Be it against Chiefs, Pirates, Sundowns, I wanted to win. So yeah, most definitely I'm looking forward to the moment that fans can be back in the stadiums. Football is just, it's not the same without the fans. The fans is what makes football. I think that, oh my goodness, there's no words to describe how much you miss that atmosphere, how much that lacks, how different everything is. I think when we played against Sundowns in the bubble, Coach Pitsuma Simani said to me, it's just not the same. It's just not the same because he just come from playing in the MTN 8 semi-final against Celtics before we played them. And he was telling me, it's just not the same. It's just so somber. And it really is. It really is so somber without the fans. The fans is what makes the game so amazing in South Africa. So please, COVID, give us the space and time to get back to our stadiums.
It's still summer. Can't we just get a break a little bit?
Oh, no.
But let's pause right here. Look, Football Stalkers, we like giving you different insights to the game that we love. From the finances to tactics to the physical side of things for player movements and all the physique that a player needs to operate in the PSL. We were joined by Simone. Simone, thank you very much for gracing us with your presence and also giving us an insight on what goes on at the training field with top players and upcoming players and everything that has to do with training.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I enjoyed our chat. It was very insightful. And yeah, I hope to chat to you again soon and meet up in the stadium, like we said.
It will definitely happen. Look, you know what to do, guys. You can go on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter and also on YouTube. Turn on that subscription